Welcome to First Universalist Church of Rochester, New York, where we are called to nurture the spirit and serve the community. I am Patty Goodwin, she, her, your worship associate this morning, and leading worship with me today are Reverend Dr. Dick Gilbert, he, him, retired minister from First Unitarian Church of Rochester, New York, Dr. Brock Chesvold, he, him, and Kitty Forbush, she, her, for our music, Reverend Michelle Yates, she, her, telling our story, Charlie Kortzel, he, him, providing tech support, and Karen Lobraco, she, her, Grusher, for our online ministry team. If you are here for the first time this morning, we especially welcome you. Thank you for making it to this worshiping community. We have a visitors form that can be found in the chat for our folks online and can be accessed by scanning a QR code in your pews or on the back of your order of service. Please fill out the form so we can offer you a welcome beyond this worship service. Before we take a moment to turn to our neighbor, let us take a moment to turn towards the camera and greet our online worshiping community. Offer a wave. Good to have you with us this day. If you are online, please pop into the chat to offer a greeting. To our online community, please wait to share joys and sorrows until later in the service so they'll be visible to those here in the sanctuary. If you are here at First Universalist, let us take a moment to turn to our neighbor this morning and offer a greeting.
Greetings. I'm not going to stumble around.
Well, hopefully neither one of us will. When she walked in, seven, gather the spirit. My last apartment was in a complex called Brittany Woods. My apartment was on the second floor, but because the land fell away from the building into a gulch and creek in the back, the view from my window was 3 stories up, looking out into the woods. A single light shone on the other side of the woods, so when it snowed, the flakes were backlit. I would stop whatever work I was doing, often turning off the lights, and watch my woods fill up with snow. Of course, Robert Frost's poem, which I had to memorize in school, would come to mind. Whose woods these are? I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and the frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gave his harness bells a shake to ask, is there some mistake? The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening evokes the contrast between wanting to stop and experience the tranquility of nature and the silence of the woods when it is snowing, and needing to keep moving to accomplish the tasks of life and to fulfill our responsibilities. In the summer, we might use the expression to stop and smell the roses. In the winter, we stop to watch the snowfall and appreciate the silence. Both these expressions highlight the need we have as individuals to stop rushing around and filling every moment with work or responsibilities so we can appreciate life. As Thoreau would say, and not when we get to the end of our lives to discover we have not lived because we have frittered away our lives with details. Come, let us find the calm and tranquility of this day and worship together. As Brian and Clint light our chalice at First Universalist Church, and you light a chalice in your own homes, will you join me in saying our chalice lighting words in unison? May we be a people of welcome, here to grow in heart and mind and spirit, and may we reach out to serve our community. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in our affirmation of faith, followed by our doxology. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the source and meaning of life. Thus do we covenant with each other and with all. From all that dwell below the skies, our staff here at First Universalist Church have been working so hard this past year, especially when Reverend Lane May Reed was away on a 5-month sabbatical. Brock, Emma, Jack, Reverend Michelle, our 2 childcare providers, Coretta and Carol, have been collaborating with us, listening, working, and helping to ensure that the ministry of this church continues. They do this work with our support. And in this holiday season, we want to give them some extra special support for all that they do for us throughout the year. It is an extension of gratitude to say thank you for the ways you help our dreams become a reality. Our offering this morning will go to support our staff holiday bonuses. Please be generous, just as they have been generous with all of us. To give, please scan the QR code on the back of the order of service, and offering baskets will come around as well. For folks online, please click the link in the chat. Your generosity matters to this community. Thank you.
Mommy, I want to help. Sit right there and I'll show you the story. Okay. Today's story is Christmas in the Trenches, written by John McCutcheon and illustrated by Henry Sorensen. Although this story is a fictional account the Christmas truce of 1914 really happened. It was a series of events occurring during World War I along the front line that stretched over 400 miles. This story is based on many first-hand accounts from soldiers on both sides of the trenches. I need your eyes. You sit with Miss Carol and listen. You're not sitting here listening. Are you ready? The presents had been opened and dinner was over. After a long walk through the snow-covered... Oh, I'm sorry, I did forget something I wanted to share. I'm sorry, could you go back one, Charlie? Thank you. I wanted to share the dedication from the author, which I thought was awesome. To my sons, Will and Peter, and to all the young people who challenge the past and change the future. The presents had been opened, and dinner was over. After a long walk through the snow-covered fields, young Thomas Tolliver curled up next to his grandfather and announced, "Grandpa, this was my favorite Christmas. Do you have a favorite Christmas?" "Yes, Thomas, I do," said Grandpa Francis. "I was far away from our home here in Liverpool. It was a Christmas many years ago during the first winter of the Great War." "You were in the war, Grandpa?" chirped little Nora, climbing onto his lap. "What was it like? Were you a hero?" Grandpa smiled. "Let's see," he said. "Why don't I start at the beginning?" The two little children snuggled closer. It was 1914. My mates and I had been on the battlefield for many weeks. We were all so young, just boys, lonely and frightened, trying to be brave. We had spent a long, cold month in the muddy trenches that were now our home. We all knew that there would be no break in the fighting. We knew we would be spending Christmas in the trenches. That Christmas Eve was a night like tonight. The skies were clearing and frost-covered no man's land, the field that separated us from the German soldiers. Staring out toward the enemy trenches, we waited. Between the bombs and the battles, war is mostly waiting. Waiting to see who will make the next move, and that night we figured it would be the Germans. And we were right. Suddenly, a sentry signaled for silence, and we all hushed. A ghostly sound cut through the cold night air. Singing. It was coming from the enemy's side of no man's land. One of the lads who knew German said, "It's a Christmas carol. He's singing it right well, you know?" Soon it seemed every German voice joined in. When they were finished, what could we do? We sang right back at them. "God rest ye merry gentlemen." All of us knew that one. Then they sang something similar. And then they sang something familiar. We couldn't understand the words, Stille Nacht, but we knew the melody. It was Silent Night. And suddenly, in two tongues, one song filled the night sky. I never imagined singing could seem so holy. Someone's coming toward us, the frontline sentry cried. As we aimed our rifles into the December darkness, we saw a most amazing sight. A single figure was coming across no man's land. In one hand, he held a white truce flag, and in the other, a Christmas tree shining with candles. It was so surprising and so brave. I couldn't help myself. I leapt from the trench and walked toward him. I was the first one, but soon everyone else from both sides was out there too. It was all so new and strange, we were nervous at first. Before long, though, we were trading small gifts, chocolates, tins of meat, whatever we had to share. When we began showing each other photographs from home, we were no longer soldiers, no longer enemies. We were all just sons and fathers far away from our families and loved ones. Our lad Saunders brought out his squeeze box, and one of their boys joined in on a nice violin, and someone had a ball, and they played soccer together. It was quite a Christmas party we had, but all too soon the dawn reminded us it was time to get back to our own sides. Back to the trenches, back to the waiting, wondering what had just happened to us and wondering what the next move should be. That is my favorite Christmas memory, that Christmas in the trenches. I'm a different man today because of the boy that I was that night. Grandpa hugged the children tighter. Was I a hero? For just one night, yes. We were all heroes. May we all be brave in any moment that we can to take a step forward towards peace. Now, if anyone still has any in their pews, today is the second Sunday of the month when we collect food for the community covered on Nestor Street. It can be food, or it also can be funds, whether you bring them now or after the service. If anyone still has food with them in the pews, we have two. Can we have some helpers to go get them? If you have food with you, if you could raise your hand and go grab the food from them and bring it up to the front. You can help, yeah. There's one back there and one over there.
Good morning. I invite you into a reverent time of sharing the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. If you would like to, you can place a hand over your heart to be able to listen from a heart-centered place. As we place stones into a bowl, I will read aloud the joys and sorrows of our gathered community. All online are invited to share your joys and sorrows in the chat, and you in the congregation can read them from the screens. W. Curry, Joys and Sorrows, what we did enough to be eligible for an early retirement program at the U of R. A sorrow at the passing of our dear friend Martha French, 15 months after her diagnosis of a brain tumor. She was a beautiful soul. That's from Moritz and M.W. Curry. Ooh, another one. A sorrow for Marty Eggers. Glenda Brayman's son was one of those who died in the helicopter crash off the coast of Japan. And we are witnessing that on the news and share our sorrow with her. And a pleasant joy for me, thanks Lyle. The flowers in the pulpit this morning commemorate the December 9th birthday of Hazel S. Gilbert, who happened to be my mother. As we drop one final stone into the bowl to represent all the joys and sorrows left unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts, may all be held in the heart of love. And now I invite you to get settled in your pews. Take a deep breath. Relax. Put aside what has happened in the last week. Be here now. And let us join in the spirit of prayer and meditation. In the holy quiet of this hour, may a hush fall over our rushing lives. We have come together here from our sometimes frantic week to seek peace of the spirit. We have rushed to and fro to get everything done, everything we think we ought to do in this special time of year, which adds delights and burdens alike to our already hectic routines. We may even have rushed to come to this house of worship, struggling to fit it in our busy rounds. There is no need to rush here. Leave hurry at the door. Relax in knowing there is nothing here you have to do. Rejoice in knowing that here you can be at peace with the world, at peace with your neighbor, at peace with your loved ones, at peace with yourself. Here may we know the peace of the infinite stars and make peace with our finite lives. Here may we feel the hush of the everlasting heavens and the precious quiet of our too fleeting lives. Here, in this house of the Spirit, may a hush come over our rushing lives. Let us keep silence together. congregational alert. This sermon was not produced by AI, artificial intelligence. I did try Chat GPT, asking it to write a sermon on calmness without putting a congregation to sleep, but it got my theology all wrong. I gave up and decided to write one of my own, and with fingers crossed. Well, as we move toward the end of another year, we celebrate two holidays to calm our spirits. Happy Hanukkah. From December 7th through 15th, it marks the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem in the 2nd century BCE, that is before the Common Era. It marked the liberation of the Jews from King Antiochus IV by the Maccabees. However, even as our Jewish friends light their menorahs, there is war in the Holy Land. We are also in the middle of Advent, the anticipation of the Christmas season. When he was a young man, George Bernard Shaw, that great English writer and wit, invented a society for the abolition of Christmas. On his 90th birthday, Bernard Shaw said he was still the self-elected president of the society, and there were no other members. While I might join Shaw from time to time in his basic skepticism, I do remember the legendary story of Jesus, born in a very troubled time. Even in the secular world, I see a kind of holy day reminding us of our aspirations. Today, December 10th, is the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, an anniversary long neglected. Millions, if not billions, struggle for their rights, some even for the right to live itself. So in the midst of these celebratory days, it seems that we have a world on fire. Viewing the evening news corroborates my discomfort and does very little to calm my spirit. If it bleeds, it leads still. Wars abound, politicians clash, families argue, the earth warms, souls are troubled. What would it be like to take the world by calm? Clearly, that style is not the way of our culture. We are urged to take the world by storm. We are just beginning what will be a bitter and divisive political campaign. There will be little calmness there. We are motivated to work incessantly, to get ahead, to be aggressive. The Protestant work ethic is alive and well in these United States. If calm is to be celebrated, it is always the calm before the storm. Ceaseless competition in the marketplace, overfull schedules that drive us to overcomplicate our lives, shouted commercials, frantic emails, and those oh so urgent text messages. Been there, done that, plead guilty. That is the way it seems to be in our culture. And there is Ukraine, hardly in our thoughts until it entered the 2016 political campaign. And then Vladimir Putin, the great Grinch of Mother Russia, invaded and war broke out. Leaving me with a problem. I had always thought of myself, if not as a complete pacifist, at least a member of the peace movement. However, realism dictates, at least to me, that our nation and the democratic West must take a stand here, be on the side of the invaded. And so I, the would-be peacenik preacher, advocate military as well as humanitarian support for Ukraine in the midst of a tragic war. It is hard to be calm. And as if that were not enough, we had the brutal Hamas invasion of Israel with death and hostage-taking, and then a predictable violent response. What war crimes have been committed and by whom, we may be quick to judge, but surely after the war, there will be tribunals, a post-war investigation. Those prospects do not complicate the soul. It is complicated. I found that out in November of 1990 when I signed a letter to the editor with a group of clergy seeking peace in the Middle East. It was prompted by Israeli violence against Palestinians at Jerusalem's Temple Mount. Reaction was swift and angry. And I eventually caught hell from both sides. To put it frankly, it hit the proverbial fan. I was persona non grata in the Jewish community among people with whom I had worked on civil rights and peace issues for a long, long time. They weren't happy with what I had done. One church family canceled its pledge. And the episode had a distinctly chilling effect. When I tried to explain, I got an angry letter from a Palestinian advocate. To make a long story short, this angry episode led to a year-long process in which we who had signed the letter met with our Jewish friends who felt wronged by it. I'm afraid no Palestinians were there, which in retrospect seems a shame. It was a Quaker-inspired process by which we would express our feelings, our deepest feelings, not only on the Middle East, but on our interfaith friendships in Rochester. I am not sure that any minds were changed on policy, but there was a calming of the waters. And now many of us struggle with our feelings about the tragedy of yet another war in the Middle East. We try to do it calmly, but it is hard. It is much more complicated than the headlines shout as they shout, urging people to take one side or another. Anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are both wrong. Since that episode, I have been to Israel, the Holy Land, twice. First in 1991 with a Unitarian Universalist study group. And one memorable day, we visited Gaza City, now much of it in ruins. We had just exited a United Nations vehicle with which we traveled when a group of preteen boys ran at us with stones in their hands, cocking their arms as if to throw, and we began to duck until we realized that we were not the target. Behind us, there was a detachment of Israeli soldiers searching a house. The boys threw those stones, and I wonder where they are right now in middle age. During the summer of 1998, I went to Israel with an interfaith group from Rochester, Jew, Catholic, Protestant, and me, the lone UU. I even got to preach a sermon on the Mount where allegedly Jesus preached the Sermon on the Mount. But I'm not sure that was the place. Anyway, these were the people with whom I had worked for years on a variety of social justice issues. We had spent time working out our differences. And during our visit, we went to Yad Vashem with its stark reminder of the Holocaust. Never again is the Israeli mantra, and it is manifest in the current war. Still, there was a calmness among us. On the latter visit, we were in the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem. And while the actual birthplace of Jesus is more likely Nazareth, it doesn't really matter, for this church exuded the beauty of birth. Depicted were a dozen or more wall-size pictures of the Nativity, each expressing a particular cultural vantage point. In one, the serene Madonna is Japanese. In another, the bewildered Joseph is Latino. And in another, the innocent infant is African. Similar art depicts Native American nativity, in which the three wise men bring corn, not gold, frankincense, and myrrh. In a Spanish nativity, all the figures are children, including the wise men who bring fruit or meats. But what captivated me about all of these depictions of the Nativity was the utter calmness they portrayed. It emanated from each one, a blessed peacefulness. Whatever the details of Jesus' birth, we do know that it was in a time of tumult, a violent time. Here, in a rush of human history, was the hushed reverence for the newborn child, born into the world. At least that's the way Matthew and Luke tell it. Both my visits to Israel were both disturbing and inspiring. They reflected humanity's highest aspirations and how far short it has fallen. We have fallen. Jesus, to me, is the gentle Jewish prophet, a calming figure, a non-anxious presence in a turbulent world. Unfortunate that the land in which he lived and died is so often in tumult. My point here is not to resolve the current controversies of the Middle East, but to remind us that out of acts of violence taking the world by storm, it was possible to take the world by calm. A similar situation greets us this Advent season: violence in the wider world and the need for calm. I become a little more traditional at this time of the year. We don't have a tree in our house. All the family trees are elsewhere. We do have colored lights on our porch in the shape of Christmas trees to show some sense of joy in the season. We Unitarian Universalists try to be just a little bit more skeptical and worldly, tend to low-key any talk of the miraculous birth of Jesus, celebrated in song and story by a believing culture. After all, the birth story is enmeshed in myth. And as my seminary Bible professor put it, we don't know enough about Jesus really to write a decent obituary. But he also said there was a kernel of truth in that myth, in that story. It calms me to remember the ministry of the prophet from Nazareth. Blessed are the peacemakers. My own seasonal highlight is Christmas Eve, a Christmas Eve candlelight service, either here in this church or wherever I might be. The quiet gathering with friends and family is a most welcome respite between the hectic fall and the energetic new year. It seems the earth this time pauses to catch its celestial breath, and so do I, or at least I try to. It is a welcome hinge of the year. And as I reflect on Christmas past, I'm sorry, I become quite nostalgic. I was born in Bristol, Baptist Hill, a little town which many of you know. There's nothing quite so quieting as the Bristol Hills, I think, with their snow-covered trees, be they green, pine, needled evergreen, or bare deciduous. There is nothing quite so peaceful as looking up in the mystical, moist night air of winter and seeing a full moon. I remember the quiet of my childhood Christmas Eve. We were just three. There was no stable, just a house down the road with a father and a mother and a son. The tree was up and decorated, packages beneath, but it was time for bed, to sleep the interminable childhood sleep of Christmas Eve in the delicious darkness. My mother helped me prepare Santa's snack to place above our coal-burning stove in the living room. It was always milk and cookies, and amazingly, it was always gone in the morning. Sometime in the darkness of a Christmas Eve, Santa came. How I dared not ask, for we had no fireplace, only an old iron stove with a stovepipe so narrow that even a svelte Santa could not get through them. Nevertheless, each Christmas Eve he came and gratefully, I think, ate his treat, giving no thought of cholesterol or calories. I'll never know how my father always stayed so thin. After the snack for Santa was placed out, my father would lift me on his shoulders, bow down when I would wish my mother a Merry Christmas and give her a kiss, and she gave me one too. And then he took me up the golden stairs, as he called it, into the dark and cold of my bedroom. We did not in those days heat the upstairs, but I didn't mind. My blankets were a 6-inch layer of insulation between the warmth of my excited body and the cold of Christmas Eve. Here in the darkness, I at last managed to enter the deep sleep of rich anticipation. It was there I felt the quiet Christmas Eve and the warm ambience of my parents and the love and quiet of Baptist Hill. How I remember the nostalgia of the embracing dark, the exquisite calmness of it all. And I confess to a case of nostalgia here. Forgive me, but I'm not going to apologize. It is, after all, the sentimental season. And while the world is caught up in the hectic rush of the Christmas season and the political unknowns of the coming year, it is a good time to let calmness come. The Christmas story itself is a narrative of calm beauty in the midst of a turbulent world. Christmas, in a way, is countercultural. It flies in the face of a commercial extravaganza. It breaks in upon our compulsive busyness as a welcome reminder of what matters most, a sense of calm within and peace without. And so it is that I am drawn to this story which you have heard and seen this morning, the story of the blessed calm of one Christmas Eve in Germany during a brutal, bloody battle of the First World War. It was 1914. On one front, a German soldier started singing Stille Nacht, Heilige Nacht. The American, British, and other Allied soldiers responded with Christmas carols in English. And despite the anger of the generals, the soldiers observed a spontaneous truce. They buried the dead, sang carols, exchanged food, drink, and gifts, and played football, soccer to us. We are, for better and for worse, more human than otherwise. I'm not ready to join Shaw's Society for the Abolition of Christmas quite yet. But I do suggest that during this holy season, we consider not taking the world by storm, but blessing it by calm. This church is a calm place for reassembling our souls. To be sure, calmness, rest, is an instrumental value. It helps prepare us for the turbulent, hectic year we know is coming upon us. But calmness, rest, is also an intrinsic value, good in and of itself. And that is what endears this season to me, when my world, our world, is caught up in the historical and often violent events, personal haste, and hectic pace. There is, or at least ought to be, a moment, the moment of calm. The gentle word spoken when one is tempted to judgment. The forgiving hand on the shoulder when one is angry with others. The peaceful presence when tension is in the air. The perspective that gives us a sense of proportion as to what is important and what is not. And so let us endeavor, insofar as in us lies, ever to be gentle in a rough and tumble world, always to be a little kinder than necessary, so that we may not so much take the world by storm as bless the world by calm in this holy season. Amen. Our closing hymn, number 318, We Would Be One. Please remain standing as we extinguish our chalice flame this morning. Let us read together the words printed on your screen. We extinguish this flame.
To be so desperate to find the way out of my world and finally breathe. Right before my eyes, I saw you. My heart, it came to life. This ain't easy, it's not meant to be. Every story has its scars. But when the pain cuts you deep and the night keeps you from sleeping, just look and you will see this will be your remedy. When the world seems so cruel and your heart makes you feel like a fool, I promise you will see this will be your remedy. No river is too wide or too deep for me to come to you. Come whatever, I'll be the shelter that won't let the rain come through. Your love, it is my truth, and I will always love you. Love you. When the pain cuts you deep, and when the night keeps you from sleeping, just look and you will see this will be. When the world seems so cruel and your heart makes you feel like a fool, I promise you will see this will be your remedy. Oh. When the pain cuts you deep, and when the night keeps you from sleeping, just look and you will see this will be your remedy. When the world